Welcome to Texas Franchise Radio, where your hosts, Josh Cherry and Robbie Marlowe, bring you all things franchising in the Texas market. Franchising is one of 3 growth strategies businesses can use to expand and capture market share, effective when done right. But there's a lot to this dynamic business model. Learn from others in the industry as we bring on all levels of franchise operators and experts.
Texas Franchise Radio. You ready? Let's go. Robbie and Josh going live, and it's time to hit the road. You were tuned in to Texas Franchise Radio. Oh, you're in the business? Well, this is what you need. Reppin' Texas, they professionals up in the industry. What we talking about? We talking business models, invest in franchises. We going full throttle. Learn about the industry. I know you got the questions. We're trying to help you grow and take it to the next level. Straight up. Franchise operators and the experts. It's time to tune
Conroe,
in
Texas,
and
what's up?
So
Welcome back to Texas Franchise Radio. We got a good show planned for you today. We're going to talk a lot about real estate. We're going to talk a lot about site selection. We've got some great co-hosts on today. My name is Josh Cherry. I'll be your host of the show, along with my co-host, Mr. Robert Marlowe.
What's up, Conroe? How y'all doing today?
Hope everybody is. It looks beautiful outside. I can see the sun shining. I know we just had a little bit of rain. I think it was pretty. It was just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
We had a little bit of rain, but we are behind that, and now we've got the Catfish Festival coming up in 2 weeks. Conroe's back off to the races. This past weekend down in Magnolia, we had the big event, the Batmobile. Which year was it?
1960. Adam West Batmobile came out.
The Adam West Batmobile was out at the plaza there where Delta Life Fitness Magnolia is on 1488. We had the big event. It was a great 6-month anniversary for Delta Life Fitness Magnolia. Delta Life Fitness Conroe is still in their pre-sale. So ladies here in Conroe, if you're looking for a good deal, you get
right now is the lowest you can get. Become a member at Delta Life Fitness Conroe right now. So
right this second, and that's not going to be there long.
Nope.
It's only going to be about another week and a half probably. So look into that. All right, let's dive in. This is going to be a lot of fun. I want to welcome our co-host today. We have Lauren. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. Ismeldy, glad to have you as well.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
being here.
Thanks for joining us. On the show, on Texas Franchise Radio, we serve 3 groups. We serve people that have a current business and want to either expand through franchising, which we obviously all know and love and are a part of. In fact, you guys just got back from one of the big IFA events, right? Springboard?
Yep, for Springboard, which focuses on emerging franchisors. So
Yeah.
it was an exciting event.
What is just for the listeners and for Robbie and I, what is an emerging franchisor? And is that us? Is that me and Robbie? Is that Robbie and I?
I believe so. I would say, and even just looking at this conference, there were some individuals that had 2 or 3 locations, and we actually had one of our largest clients, which is Nothing But Cakes, which has close to 400 units, either open or under development. But I would say primarily the emerging franchisor category that we've at least defined is really anywhere from 5 to 100 locations. So brands that maybe are open in a handful of markets, looking to grow regionally and nationally, and looking to develop some systems to do so.
Nice. So not quite that national brand recognition yet, and less than 100 units usually, and really dominating 1 or maybe 2, or just a few local markets. So that's one person we like to serve on this show, is a person that's got a current business. We talk about Conroe Coffee a lot. If Conroe Coffee will franchise that thing, that's one type of consumer we want to serve and educate. It's a person who has a business and wants to franchise. Another one is somebody wanting to buy into an existing franchise system, or somebody who's already in a franchise system. Maybe they're getting ready to go for their 2nd, their 3rd unit, and just best tips and practices. This is going to be a great show because we're going to talk a lot about one of maybe the biggest factor in franchising, which we all know the old stereotype, location. But in franchising, it's more than that. One, the location is incredibly important for the success of whatever business you're running. But then 2, that lease sometimes is heftier than the franchise agreement you've signed. Like, that's usually the most binding part of the entire endeavor. So
Absolutely.
there's so much that can go into that lease, the lease negotiations, finding the right site, the analytics, just even looking at the demographics of the area you're going to go into, you know, all the research and analysis to see where the demos are and how that matches against the site model criteria for the brand you're wanting to go into, all the way through negotiating that LOI, getting into a lease. And it can be scary, especially with most franchise terms. The average franchise term is 10 years, so most people go with a 10-year term on the lease. And that's if you get into a lease that has got some different binding clauses that won't allow you to transfer, there's all kinds of things.
Absolutely.
We're gonna dive into a lot of those, but so we're gonna have fun talking about all of those today for sure. Let's start off by just kind of diving into the state of the real estate industry. So the real estate industry, the commercial real estate industry has kind of ebb and flowed here the last, 10 years? It's kind of went up and down, and it's kind of stabilizing, and it looks like from now through 23, it's going to stay pretty steady. It doesn't look like it's going to grow too much, but it's not going to shrink either. Are you guys seeing anything, Ismeldy or Lauren, are you guys seeing any trends out there on different commercial types of sites?
Yeah. You know, one of the trends that we're starting to see, there's not as much ground up development, but there's shifts with some of the existing spaces. So for instance, even with the traditional malls, we're seeing those, a lot of those malls that aren't necessarily high performing turn outward and putting in more small shop tenants. We're seeing even larger tenants like Lifetime Fitness or other brands come in and take former anchor spaces as well as Whole Foods, which brings that synergy into that trade area. So, and then I'm also seeing a lot of times in these, let's just say A trade areas or tighter markets, brands getting more creative. So either going with a smaller footprint or going with a little bit more of a unique strategy. And so all in all, it's exciting to see the way retail and real estate is shifting. It's, you know, sometimes people ask, is brick and mortar dead, or is that still going to be an important component? I look at that especially with our restaurant groups, that they need to have their physical storefronts, but also then complementing that with some of the deliveries and some of the other ways to access their customers. So it's, you know, we're still seeing very low vacancy rates in many of the markets that we're working around the country, which is interesting, you know, given the supply and demand.
Yeah.
It's there's not as many vacancies as there were in, you know, 2009, 2010.
So why is that? Why do you think that is? Do you think, like, was our real estate, our commercial real estate economy, was it propped up by mostly retail and things that took a big hit from mass shipping and Amazon and those types of things? And so from 2009 through today, have we seen a shift from retail and those types of things into more service-based? And is that why? Do you have any idea or thoughts on why the commercial real estate's, why the vacancy rates are still so low?
Absolutely. Well, I think, you know, there has been a shift from your goods and services to more experiential brands, so such as fitness. We do a lot of work with swim schools and different items that, again, as landlords like to say, are Amazon proof.
Yes.
And so that is a big shift. And you know, we're also not seeing the larger format stores, the Targets, the other department stores grow as quickly as they used to. And so therefore, they aren't kicking off as many large power anchored centers, with the exception of grocery stores. H-E-B obviously is our dominant grocer here in Texas. And so, you know, we have several brands that follow along the footsteps of where the grocers are going and the daily needs. So just the merchandising mix is shifting, which is exciting for us. And landlords too are asking for, you know, what are the new brands that are going to be on the forefront for the next 10 years, which is exciting.
Well, hopefully we can get in that list of new brands on the forefront.
Yeah, Lauren, write down
Absolutely.
Delta Life Fitness on there.
Done.
No, that's a great point. When we first moved here, we met with the economic development partners of both the Woodlands and Conroe, and they told us, especially in the Woodlands, where it's kind of hard to see when you're driving, there's a lot of trees.
Exactly.
They warned us, and they said, you know, if you're going to put up a business, it's got to be tied to one of those anchors. And they said H-E-B specifically. They said, you know, if you're going to go into a strip center like that, make sure it's one that has an anchor that's going to pull those daily needs. That's a good way to look at that. I think, I know we've seen, have y'all also seen, now that, your brick and mortar is moving more away from, where you would put a retail is a different kind of place than your daily experience-based activity, right? With a daily experience-based activity, swim school, School of Rock, fitness, all of these types of brands, they can be out more by the neighborhoods instead of up by 45 or down on the waterway, right? Have y'all is that causing more standalone shopping centers to start popping up out more by the neighborhoods and in the subdivisions?
Absolutely. So we call that a convenient destination play or a hub and spoke model. So if Target or H-E-B was the epicenter in the hub, where are in that instance, soccer moms traveling to or from on their way, whether it be to school, whether it be to their home, or whether it be to the grocery store, what is their common pattern and how do we optimize that? So how do we find the right positioning? At the end of the day, it comes down to pricing too. All things being equal, it would be wonderful to take the Starbucks position or the bank position in a shopping center, but at the end of the day, that may not be profitable for our client or a brand that we're working with. And so we really focus on taking that deep dive as far as, how do we find the most cost-effective solution, but also capture that audience. And so a lot of that comes into the analytics side and taking a deep dive into understanding that specific community, because there are sometimes visible and invisible barriers that separate out the market that are important to be aware of when opening a new location.
It's true. It's true. And we've even seen, there's two really important things for us when we're doing site selection. Like, one, you want the drive-by traffic. That's awesome, right? You want to be able to get people to see it. But then I think even more important for us, or probably any experience type brand, if I think about it, your School of Rock, all martial arts, any of those service-based type experience class. What's really important, I wonder. I don't know. I've never thought about this. Which one's more important? Do you think, Robbie? Is it the drive?
On the spot.
Is it the drive-by traffic and people being able to put eyes on it?
Yeah.
Or is it more important to just be in a convenient 4-minute drive from my house? Which one is it a combination of both? Which one's more important there?
That's a good question.
Because a lot of these experience-based membership models, they're just running ads and you're just plugging in an address to a GPS anyway.
Yeah.
Right? So which one's more important?
It's a good question. I mean, I'd like to think probably to drive-by traffic, especially if you're on the way they're commonly going. They see you. It's that touch point. They see you more often. What do they say, 7, 8 times they got to see your brand or your name to really set in their head.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's more important, but if I had to weigh both of them, if it's something I really want to go to, say if fitness that's built for a certain clientele, like we're built for women. Our client, we know who our clientele is. We market to those ladies. It's really built for them. So when they go to it, it's their community. They're willing to drive probably a little bit farther than 5, 10 minutes.
So maybe it's less important
I'm not saying that's
as a haircut.
Exactly. Yeah, because my haircut, I'll go to the closest one.
The one you see every day.
Exactly. And I guess that depends on different things.
Yeah. Lauren, any? What do you think? Is it more important to have one or the other? It just depends on the brand.
Yeah, well, you bring up a great point. So one of the things that we recommend for emerging franchisors is looking at if this is going to be the first store in a market, especially a bigger market. So for instance, if it's your first store in Phoenix, the first location it's a best practice to make it more of what we call a billboard location or a flagship location, because the brand awareness is very low. Whereas something, if you guys did another location in Houston, you've built that brand awareness. Your customer that's coming to Conroe may have seen on Facebook already about Magnolia or other things. So we really you have more latitude as brand awareness increases. So we kind of look at the market. We also look at competition. If your competitors, if it's a saturated area, but this is where your franchisee is signing up, then we really do have to kind of look at what sets us as a brand apart from the competition. And so sometimes it's deploying a little bit of that strategy. Do we out-position them by being more convenient? Or do we showcase, the newer, cleaner, nicer, kid-friendly service where you have that visibility?
Yeah. That's a really good way of looking at that, and I've never looked at it depending on. And we look at a lot of things depending on is it first to market or is it the fit because it changes so much. But
Absolutely.
that's a good take on. And you see that with a lot of brands. They really look at the difference on the site selection from unit 1 in a market compared to unit number 10 in a market. The site selection criteria is a little different.
We've noticed we like to study brands, both our clients and even brands that we don't necessarily work with, to learn from them. And I've seen that as a best practice.
Yeah.
Sometimes brands don't follow that. And I think that is one of the key elements for launching a new market versus just picking out a location that meets some basic criteria.
Yeah, and I think that everybody that's listening that's wanting to franchise their business realize that every aspect, when you go to franchise your business, this is how much thought just goes into the site selection part of it, not everything else that comes into building a franchise. So that's why groups like the Retail Strategy come up, and that's why they're so important. Like when we're starting to see more of the shared economy, I just had a call with another group that helps with the construction. Like you're going to, as franchising grows, I mean, what is it, like 10,000 franchises in the next 5 to 10 years? New concepts.
It's at 4,400 right now. It's supposed to go to 10,000 in the next decade.
So the more that props up, you're going to see businesses like the Retail Strategy that allows franchisors, because that's not our specialty.
No.
And it sounds like just from the 5-minute conversation I've heard right here that you put more thought in site selection than we could physically do, put a team together. So,
Lauren, you undoubtedly know more about site selection than Robert Marlowe or Joshua Cherry.
Yeah, I was really taking a lot in, taking notes. So.
No, you beat me to the punch, but I was gonna be like, man, Lauren's been on the show for 5 minutes.
Story of my life.
I'm already learning stuff. Ismelda gets it. You know what's going on.
Yeah. No, but it's just great hearing that insight. Lauren kind of gets. I'm learning how to kind of take that deep dive and really understanding that brand, because that's the secret sauce part of it.
Yeah.
Once you understand what they need, who they're marketing to, and everything else can kind of fall along.
Well, and this is why I'm so passionate about franchising. That's why I love franchising so much. Because it's hard, like Robbie said. I mean, oh my goodness, just the things, the mastery of the business of franchising and the mastery of your consumer-facing model and having to understand both of those and how they tie together, and the fact that they change every time you go into any new area of the world, and then all the variables of the different types of franchisees you can bring in. It's a tough thing to conquer.
No, absolutely.
However, there's a beautiful thing, and I think Robbie's making a great point. I think franchising's been really good for this country up until now, right? Mostly iconically through fast food and other distribution type models. Now, as we become more of a service-based economy, and you're seeing all these service-based franchises pop up, the consumers is what's going to win here. They really are, because brands are growing, and the more that all these supporting agencies, these franchise sales organizations, these site selection, the more that we can continue to outsource. I mean, because when you go to open a business, right? When anybody goes to open a business, you're investing a lot of your time, money, effort, and energy. You should do a very thorough market strategy. All the things we're going to talk about when we come back from commercial, Lauren, that your firm does, they should do. Well, you know what? We'll hit it when we get back. My man said time for a commercial break. Conroe, we'll be right back.
The Texas Franchise Radio. Oh, you're in the business. Well, this is what.
A Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show, with monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
Hey, Montgomery County and online listeners. Thank you so very much for checking out Jazzy Vibes with Soul. What? You haven't done so yet? Well, you've got to tune in. Hi, I am the host of Jazzy Vibes with Soul, Miss CeCe Holmes, and I invite you to check us out every Friday and Saturday from 7 until 9 p.m., where you will get the best in old school R&B and, of course, a little smooth jazz to make it jazzy. So tune in. That's right, tune in every Friday and Saturday right here on Conroe's 104.5 and 106.1 FM, or worldwide at irlonestar.com.
Is there someone you know who is hooked on vintage aircraft? Follow the Commemorative Air Force and its fleet of World War II planes, including the mighty B-17 Flying Fortress Texas Raiders, which is based in Conroe, Texas. Texas Raiders tours locally and all around the United States, offering the public a chance to put their hands on aviation history. What could be a more perfect gift than a flight on a historic B-17? Taking to the sky on the iconic bomber is an experience that will never be forgotten. For the touring schedule, reservations, or more information, go to b17texasraiders.org or call 855-FLY-A-B-17.
Texas Franchise Radio. You ready? Let's go. Robbie and Josh going live, and it's time to hit the road. You were tuned in to Texas Franchise Radio. Oh, you're in the business, well, this is what you need.
Conroe, Texas, welcome back, Texas Franchise Radio. And everybody watching us on Facebook Live, Travis, Shane, Doug, Cassie, Austin, Holly, Kyle, love having you guys out there. If you have any questions for Lauren, and Esmeldy, throw it in the comments and we'll get those answered. Lauren's about to drop a lot of knowledge about site selection. Before we get into that, let's talk about, let me wrap up that thought we were on right before we went to break there. Franchising, super powerful business model. It's really hard because, like we talked about, you have to, in order to run a successful franchise, you have to master two things: the business of franchising and the consumer-facing model, and then figure out how to tie those together, and then figure out how to give people a relatively high percentage of success and profitability with the variables of the different types of franchisees and the different types of markets you can go into. Mm-hmm. That's a hard thing to figure out. But anytime you start, if you start a regular business, if you're just going to start a business yourself without going into franchising, you still need to do all this. You still need to do a market study. You still need to do all these different things. You need to have professional contractors. You need to have professionals installing the equipment. You need to do those things. But when you're just starting a business from scratch, you're scared because all of this is just an idea in your head. You don't know if the business is going to work at all. Yep. And you definitely don't know if all this money you're investing is the right things because it's the first time any of it's been tested. So you're terrified to spend all this money. That's what's beautiful about a franchise system. The more it goes on, every store they get, how much do we learn every single store opening?
No, absolutely, no, a lot. We're still learning.
Every single one, right? And we pour that into making the very next one better and better. But where franchising can really win, and this isn't just our model, this is across the country, because we talked about it, all these service-based brands, we're going to go from 44 in North America to 10,000. If the franchisors of those concepts can stay true to what they knew in their core competencies, that consumer-facing model, and they can continue to figure out how to make that profitable. And people like Lauren, who you know more about site selection right now than I'll ever know. I can spend the next 20 years trying to catch up. You've got me beat. So why would Robbie and I pull away from our core competency of learning how to serve women in the fitness studio, right? And learn site selection when you can outsource that. And it just man, when this whole economy picks up and we're really starting to see it, all these support organizations that are coming around franchising, what was the talk at Springboard? Is it optimistic for all these emerging franchisors? Like, what's the talk at IFA about the way the franchise industry is moving? Was it positive this past time?
Yes, absolutely. I think some of the key takeaways at Springboard this last week, I guess, were, really talking about culture. And just as y'all had touched on in other episodes, finding the right franchisee is paramount. And not every franchise is right for every franchisee. But being able to define your culture and your people and really what that unique offering is crucial. And then, the other thing that fascinates me about franchising and why we're huge fans of it is the systems in place and the scalability. And so there's a recipe book. And just, one of the things, again, at Springboard that they touched on was, being willing to learn, having some standards, but then being able to challenge those and say, what did we learn at 20 units that we didn't know at 10? What are we learning?
Yeah.
You see different franchise concepts kind of hit major milestones at the 10, 25, 50, and 100 mark. And so, it was interesting to kind of look at some of those unique challenges, and whether it was a larger franchisor with close to 400 units or whether it was a franchisor that had one franchisee. So many of the challenges were similar with building that culture,
Yeah.
maintaining that, and growing that into new markets.
It's so funny. Franchising seems to be like anything else. Like you think you're stuck in your own little world dealing with your unique set of problems. The very first time Robbie and I went to an IFA show, like we're reading just the class titles. And the class titles were all of the pain points we were having at the time. We were like, oh.
There is somebody else in this that was having trouble with all this. It's not just us.
It's such a complex, hard thing. But man, there's nothing more American than franchising. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what's funny is we always touch base on it. When we came up through a fitness mastermind. So when we started our fitness business, we came through a fitness mastermind. And as the fitness business kind of grew through the boutiques, through mom and pops, you see different groups open up, marketing firms that do franchising, very niche towards the fitness industry. You're going to see the same thing for the franchise industry, and you actually are seeing it. I'm seeing a lot more ads pop up on my Facebook page.
Oh yeah.
With Glenn Ross, the leads are weak. You know, talking about your franchise
Let
leads.
us take over your franchise sales. Let us take over this.
So, but it's going to make franchising even more professional because when you have groups like you that just concentrate on one aspect of what a franchisee should deliver to the franchisees, it makes them look more professional, makes them operate more professionally. So,
oh my goodness, how much better is it for us to pay a company like Lauren? We're about to dive into the retail strategy. We want to hear where it came from, where it came about, what you guys are currently doing today. But yeah, when it comes to, do we want to hire up and staff up and build this entire real estate team, or is it better for us to outsource that to consumer? And what's going to be a better experience for our franchisees? Probably handing them over to professionals like yourself instead of us trying to learn that. So I think you're going to see that with everything that comes from signing the franchise agreement through getting the doors open.
And if I'm about to sign a 10-year lease, I want to make sure, and that, like you said, when you're starting your first business, you don't want to spend that extra money. But right now, as many as we opened up, and every franchisor out there is probably screaming, it really is important. And spend the extra money right now. Get the market scrubbed. Understand where everybody's at, where they're going. Do your research, because that's going to be a long-term investment for you, and it's going to be the success of your franchise. So
it's true. And the better and the stronger the franchisor and that system, and the better their item 19, the more confident those new franchisees coming in are going to be investing in those upfront costs that they know they should be.
Yeah.
And it's always which one's got to come first. And that's why it's hard to judge a brand that's got 2 units. I mean, the franchisee coming on at 2 units, they know they're not signing up for McDonald's. At least they should, right? Like your franchisee number 2, man. Like you should know that's going to be a little different than a well-established franchisor.
You're going into a franchise.
Not that they're better or worse. There's a lot of exciting things about being franchisee number 2, and a lot of people love that. But you got to know from a consumer standpoint, there's a difference, right?
Yeah. One of the interesting things that that I had as a takeaway from the multi-unit franchising conference back in April was they did a study on really what multi-unit, or kind of what we call like the mega franchisees, meaning they have a minimum of 7 units, but they can be up to 500 units of franchised concepts, one or multiple. And, what do they look for in diversifying their portfolio? And one of the interesting things, whether it be a Wendy's franchisee, even one of our clients that was an Orange Theory franchisee, they're looking for, they're open and they're excited to look at emerging franchisors.
Oh, yeah.
Even if they only have a handful of units, because they also see the opportunity. And at the end of the day, it comes down to just looking at the system, the leadership, and the culture along the way. And so I just thought that was kind of fascinating that they were also looking.
That's funny, huh?
To shift out of the more established brands to diversify their portfolios. And those are some of the different clients that we work with that ask us, what is the next concept we should open in Houston? And so it's a little bit of a reverse play on looking at saturations and demands and what these trends are in different geographies.
It's funny you bring that up, and you brought up Orange Theory, so I'm going to use this as an example. But I think it's even more than that. Like one spread, and we have a partner on the West Coast that owns about 150 franchises from different brands: the Jersey Mike's, Hardee's, some Delta Lifes,
Blaze Pizzas.
Yep. That's our California store that's open is with that partnership. So diversifying risk, spreading that. But what we've also seen, and what I didn't account for, you have people that got in midway through Orange Theory in Ohio, and they only had 2 units left that they could get. The rest of the territory was sold out, and they've had a lot of success with that brand or whatever brand. But they saw the guy who bought the entire state of Ohio and how well he did with Orange Theory, and they're looking at him like, well, I ran my 2 studios, but I have no potential for growth in this brand anymore. But man, I saw with the guy who bought all of Ohio when OTF was just an emerging brand, he got the entire state of Ohio for pennies on the dollar, and I just saw him sell it for $20 million. Exactly. Then they start looking for what's the next brand that's going to do that I can be early and get a bigger territory. So that you're right, they're always watching that cycle. So it's not doom and gloom to be an emerging franchisor at all. In fact, there's sometimes we're getting more attention than some of the bigger brands because we're the new thing that's on the block, and we're getting weekly visitors come in from all over the country right now, probably because we are an emerging brand. So there's benefits to both.
Absolutely.
Let's learn about the retail. You have something else on that?
No, I was about to, but no, let's go ahead and learn about the retail strategy.
Let's learn about the retail strategy. Lauren, Ismeldy, talk to us. Tell us, what is the retail strategy? Where did this idea come from, and what are you guys up to?
Sure. So just a quick background on myself and the company. As I finished high school, I actually came across a franchise and put together a little business plan from my dad and said, instead of paying for college, could you buy this franchise for me?
Oh, well done.
And so in college, I ran a franchise in Austin called the National League of Junior Cotillions. And so it was a dance and etiquette program for middle schoolers, and we ran 5 different chapters around Travis County.
That's cool.
And that's really where I fell in love with franchising and the system and the ability to scale. If I didn't go through that process, I don't think I would have understood the value of having that playbook and following that playbook for success. And so I had that for 5 years throughout college, and also went to UT, studied real estate finance, and then worked for a lady that was an in-house real estate manager for McDonald's and PepsiCo for about 30 years. And so from there, learned the corporate side of how do these larger brands grow and scale.
Oh, nice.
Got quite busy with that, and so I sold the franchise. And then about 6 years later, she had retired. And I was actually looking either for a real estate company that had a franchise model that I could open, since I was a huge fan of franchising, or just a larger platform that I could focus on elevating the expansion process, really painting the picture and telling the story. Because I think that's where a lot of our brands, both our corporate brands and our franchise brands, sometimes struggle, is they don't understand all the unique dynamics of the market. And so because I couldn't find anything, I said, well, I have my first intern, and I'll just start the retail strategy and see what happens for about a year. And so that was in 2009, so we've been around 9 years. And then really we just, is built on solving challenges for our clients.
Yeah.
And so where that led to was going outside of Central Texas, going into secondary markets. We also saw a shift on corporate brands not expanding corporate locations, but actually looking to franchise. So for instance, Einstein's Bagels was one of our clients. They were growing corporately, and then they said, well, we're actually needing a franchisee for San Antonio. We're needing a franchisee for South Texas. We knew their real estate requirements. We knew their strategic growth. And so that was actually when Ismeldy came on our team, and we had a spinoff called the Franchise Connection, where we actually set up events in the communities with business leaders, with existing franchisees, and with our clients that were franchisors looking to grow. And
that's a great idea.
Good success with that, and really were able to grow our platform regionally. Fast forward about then 5 years later, a lot of our brands started asking us, can you develop the roadmap nationally and take a deep dive into understanding who we are and then execute on that strategy. And so that's where we've developed into the 4 pillars of location intelligence, franchisor solutions, franchisee guidance, and tenant representation.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then looking at your website too, I mean, you guys work with some really big brands. You already mentioned Nothing But Cakes, but you had a really nice testimonial from Panda Express, somebody over at their corporate team. I'm just going to read this real quick. They just said, "I'm so proud to have such a great broker team. They emulate proactive and innovative and always push the envelope to best meet our needs. The retail strategy is an important partner to Panda Express and its development program." It keeps going on, but that's awesome.
Thank you.
Well done.
We've enjoyed working with them. They've actually been a client from starting the company, and so they've been also a good mentor for us and a good group. Being over 2,000 units, we can also see how these larger companies do it and take a lot of the best of practices and provide that expertise to emerging franchisors that may not have the budget or bandwidth to hire a large an in-house real estate team.
That's what I was going to say. So what do you see as you have the 4 core competencies that you guys do.
Yes.
On the franchisor side, what is so I know you said it's emerging brands from 20 to 100, right? Or 20 to 200. What is that sweet spot that a brand? I mean, if a brand's only got 1 or 2, is it too early to work with you guys just yet? Do they maybe not have their systems redefined enough? And then from 20 to 200, that's the sweet spot where they can afford the out-serviced service, but not a full in-house real estate team. Is that kind of?
Yeah, I would say, our goal is we want to be long-term team players and we want to build a relationship. So we can start smaller and we can go larger, but sometimes you need a little bit of a sample in order to build a model. And if you have 1 or 2 locations, we can provide some guidance on what we recommend for site selection. But if you have 10, 15, 20 units, we can actually scrape that data. We can study those results. And what a franchisor sometimes feels is their target customer, feels is their trade area, we can actually showcase as to what it actually is. We can, there also needs to be proof of market. So in other words, ideally, where we are most effective is when the franchisor has locations in more than one MSA or geography. So kind of touching on the brand awareness. Yeah. If you're only in Houston and in no other markets, the brand awareness plays a factor too. And so we can work with smaller groups, but what we found is we have 4 different platforms for brands that are looking to grow and kind of grow into the larger platforms, depending on how much they want to expand and what areas they want to target. The way we coach and advise a 1 or 2 unit brand is different than the way we advise a 200 unit brand.
Makes sense. No, it makes sense. All right, we are getting ready. We're going to wrap it up to a commercial break. When we come back, and that's a lot on the franchisor side of the house and what you can do to help the franchisors. When we come back, let's dig into the franchisee side. Let's talk about, let's just talk about good site selection practices, LOIs, negotiating leases. When we come back with Lauren from the Retail Strategy.
Robbie and Josh going live, and it's time to hit the road. You were tuned in to Texas Franchise Radio.
Did you know there are more than 790 abused and neglected children currently in foster care in Montgomery County? Will you help make a difference? I'm Allie Stevens with Casa Child Advocates of Montgomery County. We train and support volunteers to be the voice of children in the foster care system. Kids are removed from their home because of abuse and neglect, and we need volunteers just like you to advocate for these children. To learn more about becoming an advocate, please visit CasaSpeaksForKids.com. That's CasaSpeaksForKids.com.
For those of you who like your partners, your gumbo, and your music salty, well, we're here to help with the music. Julian Shea here, host of Lone Star Country Nights Thursday, your weekly dose of roots and Americana and all the music that makes this part of the country special. We stir in Western swing, honky-tonk, Zydeco, Texas blues, outlaw country, and put a pinch of red dirt, and then we smoke it over a slow fire. Then listen to the results Thursday nights on Conroe's 104.5 and 106.1 and worldwide at irlonestar.com.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show. With monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast. Create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776.
Texas Franchise Radio. You ready? Let's go. Robbie and Josh going live, and it's time to hit the road.
Welcome back, Conroe. We are here on Texas Franchise Radio talking all things franchising. Today, mostly about site selection and real estate in general. We've got some great co-hosts on the show today, very experienced, very knowledgeable about franchising and site selection and all things to do with all of that from the retail strategy. Lauren, we were just about to get into the good stuff. And we kicked it over to a commercial. We're back. Hey, let's talk about, in most franchises, and this will be good for the franchisor, the young franchisors out there. It's going to be good for me and Robbie. We got our note-taking pens ready. Yep. And good for any franchisees that are out there that are about to begin the site selection process. Whenever you have been approved by a franchise system and you get awarded your territory, that's a very exciting moment. You know, you've probably been investigating this brand for 6+ months. You've been through a lot of emotional ups and downs as you've tried to make this decision, and it's over, and the document signed, and you have your territory. Now what? What's our next best steps when we have our territory and we want to get just that perfect site, Lauren? What are our steps here? What do we go into first?
Absolutely. So really the first step that we do when a territory is awarded is study that territory. That is really important because each market is going to have unique attributes. They're going to have positives and they're going to have maybe some areas of the territory that you wouldn't necessarily put a location. And so the key is to understand what that pool is. And so what we do is we look at not only the demographics, so, you know, the income levels, the population, but we look at how that market trades. Where do people go during the day? Where do they go in the evening? For children-oriented brands, we look at school districts. Where's the shift in school districts? Where are new schools coming in? One of the things that we want to look at is not only where's the hot spot today, but what is going to be the trend moving forward for the next 10 years? Because this is a huge investment. Franchisees are spending a lot of times either their life savings, 401ks, and personal guarantees. And so we take that very seriously on understanding the territory, making sure our franchisees do the same. And then when we look at, you know, those key elements, we spend a lot of time on what we call psychographics and tapestries, so the type of customer. And look to really define, you know, what are the 4 or 5 main tapestries that our customer is coming out of. And so then from there, we start to do a deep site scrub. And as Melody has done this with a lot of different brands, do you want to touch a little bit on the site search and the site scrub?
Yeah, so I mean, we talk to brokers, you know, reaching out on multiple, you know, clients and stuff, but you know, it's developing those relationships with them too. You know, that's how we kind of get those off the market kind of sites as well. You know, building those relationships. One of my territories is DC. So, for example, this week I was in Annapolis. You know, I had already reached out in Annapolis a couple months ago for another client, and just calling back, you know, started that conversation. Not only giving me those off-the-market sites, but also what's going on in the trade area. Yeah. You know, where's a new West Annapolis is like blowing up, or it's about to. So I kind of get that intel too. So at the same time that I'm online, kind of, you know, site searching there, I street drive, you know, and I've even visited in person. You know, we take a lot of pictures, take a lot of notes, write down a lot of numbers, but I even Google street drive, you know. So it's taking that deep dive, not only personally or physically, but also digitally as well. And it also gets you learn those trends. Oh, this area is more of, you know, the brick and mortars. Over here is more of mixed use. So we kind of take that deep dive into site selection as well by building relationships in our territories and being able to, you know, provide that, you know, the information for our franchisees.
That's a really important piece because, I mean, I don't know how many times we've scrubbed the internet, pulling all the sites, and just we end up finding the perfect location while driving the territory. Yeah. You know, sometimes.
Well, and you also see competitors too and see where they're going. Yeah. You know, because they're kind of, hopefully they're doing the same thing too. So you can kind of take notes with what they're doing and see, you know, the new ones coming in, the ones existing, so that we kind of take the deep dive into competitors as well, because they have their own trends, and we can learn from them too.
Of course, especially the bigger brands. They're already spending a lot of money
Yeah,
on
yeah,
a
I
lot
know,
of the same things. So territory awarded, we're studying that territory. Sounds like all different types, demo, psycho, all different types of things we're studying there. Competitive analysis, site scrub, then what?
Looking at that too, we're strategically looking at where do we want to be versus, yes, we're at the mercy of the market, but we've had good success in coming up with creative options. Sometimes we have to bring 3 of our clients together to take down a larger space. Sometimes we can find out about a tenant that's not exercising a renewal. And so I would say almost 50% of the time, we find a site that doesn't have a for lease sign on it.
That's really good.
And, I think that's sometimes franchisees or franchisors ask us, how do you know our market locally if you're out of Texas? And I think that the way that we are able to address and overcome that is we have to take an objective view on everything. So we have to take that deep dive. We have to ask every site by site in those key areas that we want to go.
Okay.
So then once we have identified, let's say, 10 or 12 sites, we put together a tour book that really paints the picture, tells the stories, showcases the new developments, showcases the why. Even sometimes on the restaurant side, restaurant franchisees want to know how other restaurants are doing. And so we include that information as well. And then we tour the market with the franchisees. Once from there, we then recommend submitting letters of intent. We always recommend not just submitting one letter of intent, but often looking to see what are our top anywhere from 2 to 5 choices, because there's always going to be pros and cons of the sites. Sometimes it could be economics, where 2 sites are comparable and across the street from one another, but one might be $25 a square foot and one might be $15 a square foot. So that plays a huge role. And we focus on driving down the economics, increasing the incentives, and maximizing the build-out periods and the free rent periods for our brands. One of the ways that we're able to leverage some of those incentives is by getting the landlords excited about our use. So we do spend a lot of time on educating landlords on the brands that we're working with. We put together what we call a franchisee highlight page, which actually highlights some of the franchisees' achievements, even if they're a first-time franchisee. How can that relate to their success in this market to drive down the risk?
Nice.
And then we submit the letters of intent.
Nice. We call ours. We have a sheet. It's just a 1-page sheet. It shows a picture of our renderings. It's called Tenantship Perks.
Yep.
And we list all the reasons why it's great to have us in your shopping center.
Yeah.
It's
That's
just
great.
a 1-page with visuals and stuff.
Yeah.
It talks about all the women, the consumer traffic we're going to bring in. It talks a lot about the family-oriented business type stuff. So.
You talked a lot about the incentives and making sure that you capitalize on the incentives. Do you find finding a space that's not have a for lease sign, or do you find it a little bit easier to negotiate and kind of get better incentives on something like that, or?
That's a good question. I would say it really varies market to market.
Okay.
Like, for instance, in Florida, we aren't seeing landlords give a very high tenant improvement allowance. But something in Texas, we're seeing higher tenant improvement allowances, but landlords aren't wanting to do work. In DC, we're seeing landlords deliver our space in the specifications that we're requesting, but not giving free rent. So it really I would say it's a little bit more market specific.
Yeah.
It also depends on the landlord. A mom and pop landlord, oftentimes you could get cheaper rent or free rent, but you're getting less upfront incentives.
Yeah.
A larger landlord or a REIT, which is a real estate investment trust, they may require a higher rent, but they can give you a higher tenant improvement allowance, which is where the landlord comes back and reimburses you for a portion of your build-out costs.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's good. So doing the study of the territory, then the site scrub, then the LOI, and you recommend 2 to 5. And on the LOI, we're wanting lower economics, more incentives, and really negotiating that free period. Those are the 3 main things you're trying to go for in an LOI.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We go in very aggressive with the letters of intent. every once in a while, sometimes the landlords return them to us and tell us they're too aggressive,
Of
but
course.
then we know we're doing our job.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So we'll negotiate on behalf of the franchisees with their feedback and support. Usually anywhere from 3 to 8 times, we'll go back and forth on negotiations, and then in order to work towards the top location. And we'll also provide what we call a rental analysis, so that franchisees can see along the way how a rent decrease and a tenant improvement increase and free rent, how that plays
How that's
to the
all affecting.
net profit of the deal.
Okay.
And so that's really, that's an education process, because sometimes franchisees don't know what to ask for. Landlords do this day in and day out, and landlords brokers do.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
That's true.
so oftentimes they just tell, we've heard situations where franchisees sign the first letter of intent or they sign the first lease. And so our job is to protect the franchisee and to push on the franchisee's behalf to squeeze out every penny that we can get to really set them up for success. We also educate the landlords that it will take some time to ramp, i.e. build the memberships, build the sales. And so that's why we need some of these
Yeah.
discounted rents and upfront incentives.
Man, that's good stuff. Lauren, Esmeralda, you guys have been great. You're bringing a lot of knowledge, and it's a lot of good stuff for people that are, because it's such an important thing for people. We've got just a couple minutes left. We've gotten through the LOI; those are good. On the lease, rapid fire round. What's some of the most important? Robbie and Lauren, I'm gonna let you two go at it on this one. Rapid fire round. What's your most important tip for somebody on a lease? What is a really big gotcha that can hurt somebody?
Not the ability to transfer the lease to somebody else if you sell your business.
Yeah.
Why is that important? Because I'm still on a lease on a business I sold. So obviously I had to learn that the hard way.
That's true. My personal guarantee on my personal lease in Florida was up in August, so I'm a free man.
Congratulations.
But I have also similarly learned that's an important one. I'll agree with you. Lauren, what's a really big gotcha that most people don't know to look for in a lease?
I would say, in addition to limiting the personal guarantee, 2 things are a radius restriction. So landlords sometimes will put in a restriction that says that you cannot open another location within a certain distance. As an emerging franchisor, as a new franchisee, that may seem okay, but 5 or 10 years down the road, you may want to open up something in 2 miles. Your Delta Fitness may be full on memberships, and so you need to maybe open up something close by. So removing a radius restriction is really important.
Okay.
And then also exclusivity. So exclusivity means that the landlord will then exclude competing businesses from their center. And you want to maximize that to protect yourself so that you don't end up, again, with 4 or 5 different fitness users all in that same stretch competing for business, or 3 or 4 smoothie users all competing for the same business. Landlords tend to generally make a conscious effort to merchandise their center well to limit vacancies, but it's also something that franchisees need to really push hard on protecting themselves, so that we've had an instance with Nothing But Cakes where a cookie store has opened up next to us, or some of these other dessert concepts. And so we've really spent a lot of time tightening up our language and pushing hard on that, because it does affect business.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think that was going to be mine, Esmeralda. I don't know if you want to go with one. Mine was going to be the non-compete. I think having a non-compete's good. One thing, and this is a business decision, but I always like spelling it out in the lease and if-then statements, because if it just says, if you open a fitness business and it says you can't, the landlord can't put another competing fitness business. Well, then if he does, what's your options? Now you got to go to court and battle an attorney that, a very well-funded landowner, a trust, like you said, compared to a franchisee that already leveraged everything. So I like it better, if you put an if-then statement. Hey, if you open another fitness type business in this center, my rent's reduced by $20 a square foot annually, or whatever. Have that if-then statement. So if he does, break it, it's very clear what compensation you get to, so you don't have to go fight a legal battle.
Absolutely.
If they break it. All right, this has been a great show. Lauren, Esmeralda, thank you so much for having us. The Retail Strategy. If you need more information on site selection, how can they find you guys?
feel free to visit our website. It's www.theretailstrategy.com.
TheRetailStrategy.com. Lauren, Esmeralda, thank you so much for having us on the show. Conrad, we'll see you. We'll see you next month. Have a good week.
Tuned in to Texas Franchise Radio. Oh, you're in the business. Well, this is what you need. Reppin' Texas.
Thank you for listening to Texas Franchise Radio, where we bring on all the local franchise experts. If you liked the show, please share it with your friends. If you have any questions you'd like answered live on the show, send them to @Texas Franchise Radio on Facebook. Till next time.
You've got to be wondering